Calm is restored in Hammanskraal in Tshwane. This after residents brought the township to a standstill in protest over poor quality of water. Last month, the city of Tshwane was hit with claims of a cholera outbreak. A team investigating the cholera outbreak found no trace of the bacterial disease. Disgruntled residents said that they have followed all proper channels to raise their issue, alleging that the city turns a blind eye. Earlier, police opened fire at residents who pelted stones at them. All major roads were blocked with burning tires and rocks. However, the crowds dispersed after community leaders intervened. Afro Worldview reporter Sipa Kema spoke to a local about his reasons for protesting.
Last week I was sick for 3 days. Even my son was sick for 3 days. Nka ona metsi ara nwa mo. Metsi a teng ha o bulela ka mo pompong a brown. How a bidisa a tswa lefulo modimo. And then a one selo se se etsiwang. It's been months. There was a protest before ka the same water, and even now ha ona ntwe diriwa hala. How are we serious as the residents tsa mo Temba. So a go diriwe plan at least ka metsi. A metsi a lwadisa le bana ba rena. So now tshwanetse re ro reka metsi while metsi a ntse a tswa mo dipompong. So it's unfair for us, the residents.
Basically, they are about service delivery. As you correctly mentioned, it's about water. And again, they are complaining about billing system. But to say the city of Tshwane turned a blank eye on that, it's untrue. We all imagine that last week the city issued a statement on the matter to say apparently there was allegation that there was cholera in the area, and tests were done all to find that it was incorrect. And that message was communicated to the residents of Hammanskraal last week before the outbreak this week.
Well, to unpack the story further, I'm joined in studio by the Hammanskraal community leader Andrew Sehoe. Also in studio, I'm joined by the Hammanskraal community member Thabo Nkwana. Via Skype, we are joined by Professor Nerina Bola Muller, the Executive Director for Governance and Service Delivery, Human Sciences Research. Good evening to you all, and thank you so much for joining us. Let's just start with you, Mr. Sehoe, as a community leader. Yeah. Talk to us about the protest in Hammanskraal today, what the grievances were that were in the memorandum.
Yeah, our grievances is that relaka metsi ana ka fail metsi ana ka lorking at the seretse and ka fa re tshwntse re duela, we must pay, and then re kopetse the MEC pele ra mo kopela hore ke o ko tlo taste metsi ya wa testile me fela ile ka forced re mo testisa on. Ano re mo khopetse gape gona o tlile ko rena a tlo botsa gore metsi a bjang ra motsa re metsi a still a samana le pet even la wa bulela o ka a smela that o kusisa makaka man. Oh.
And how long has your water been this dirty? You say it's muddy, it smells like feces. It's not consumable.
A period of 6 months. Re ntse re khopela the MEC re mo khopela bile re mo khopela bile re kwala mara fela re sa credit karabo moye.
And Thabo, just talk to us as well, the protests. I mean, we've had about 144 service delivery protests in the country this year alone. That's a lot more than what we had the whole of last year. Is the service delivery protest the measure of last resort, or is it the first option that people actually go for these days?
Or let me put it this way. The protest is all about the material adisigla, and then a problem morena itlhile mo loring le nna ne ke le victim ya meja mo loring le nna se le ka tsonya thata ka tengira nang monna. So now we are pleading to the government, or how about they do something then, because we have handed over the memorandums, and so they didn't answer us. So that's why we strike, and then maybe
So you actually got sick from drinking the water?
Yeah.
How many days were you out like hospitalized or away from home?
Okay, I was at home, but I was not hospitalized, but it was 4 days. I think, yeah.
So even if you boil this water, you find that you're still not able to drink the water. It's still dirty.
You cannot drink that water, because when you boil it, you see like come in the bubbles, you know, and got the smell, and that water is not fine for, it's not healthy for anyone.
So every single month, Hammanskraal residents actually pay for water that comes out of the tap, that brown murky water, and then you have to end up buying drinking water and water for cooking on top of that.
Definitely. Yeah.
So what happened that actually caused the MEC to finally come? Was it in response to a protest that you guys actually carried out?
MEC have never even had answers. You have never brought us answers because now we are complaining every now and then. We have over 100 and something thousand for paying water, but the MEC, we call him, we ask him. So now he have never even, he said he will come after 7 days. He have never even yet come since we see this problem of water.
Now, Professor Nania Bola-Miller, good evening to you. Thank you for joining us. Just from a research perspective, what seems to be the causes of service deliveries? And they seem to have spiked a lot this year. Can you confirm some of those figures for us?
Yes, thank you very much. Good evening. I think that we are facing a situation where people are feeling more and more frustrated. As you can hear from our guests in studio, you know, we are in a situation where the trust in democracy or faith in democracy is declining in South Africa and has been over the past 10 to 15 years. And obviously, as trust in democracy declines, people don't feel as if their voices are being heard. Public participation is not working. Citizens are not engaging, and government officials are not responding to the frustrations. So things escalate, and we haven't been able to get to a point where we can de-escalate what the frustrations of communities are. So I think corruption, failure in service delivery are reasons for this level of frustration. And of course, you know, winter, oddly enough, is strike season. So we are seeing more strikes now than we would have, for example, at the beginning of the year.
And Professor, just in terms of alternatives that are available, I mean, the guests in studio mentioned that they've written memorandums of grievances, submitted them to the office of the MEC. What are those procedures that should be followed before resorting to a protest?
Okay, well, I think first of all, I want to make clear that protest is a human right. In other words, Section 17 of the Constitution allows citizens in a democracy, in our democracy, to protest. But it's the nature of the protest, I think, that is important. So we have peaceful protests where there are certain rules that need to be met in terms of legislation. It's called the Regulation of, the Regulation of Gatherings Act. And so you need to say when, where, and how, and then the protest takes place, the memorandum is handed over. But often this doesn't work, and then protests become more disruptive and then finally violent. So I think that what's really needed is actually from the side of municipalities and local government to be far more responsive. I don't think that the MEC would necessarily be the first step along this line. There's a lot of steps that need to be taken because MECs tend to be very inaccessible. And so perhaps the councillors, the municipal managers would be able to respond better to the situation. But of course, each situation is actually quite unique.
And just coming back to studio, she's mentioned that perhaps you can go to the councillor and the municipal manager before getting to the MEC. Had you approached the councillor with your grievances before going to the MEC's office?
Many times we go to our councillor. Many times our councillor will say, "No, I've been with the MEC." So now, but now the MEC cannot even come to us and tell us, "Oh, what he had finished with the councillor." So now this is the whole thing. So now we see that the MEC, he'll never even come again to us.
Now, Thabo, you know, the professor mentioned that striking is a human right, which I mean, you are allowed to strike, you have a right to strike, you've exhausted all of the measures. But in terms of the nature of the strike, was today's strike meant to be a peaceful protest action? Because at some point, I think the police officers began to fire rubber bullets because the protesters began to stone them, throw stones at them. Was it meant to be that way? Was that the plan?
No, that was not the plan actually. But yesterday, I think yesterday we have protested in a way whereby we don't even want fighting. So our plan was that we want a peaceful strike. Even today, the strike was very, very, very peaceful. But because of some officers just fired, we don't know, they went to the homes of other victims, they arrested them. So things got messed up, so we didn't understand what's going on. But our plan actually was to have a peaceful strike so that everyone must hear us.
Another element also is some people tend to think that political parties only provide certain services when it's close to election time. Yeah. Do the people of Hammanskraal also feel that way, that the political parties come and they bring you clean water just before elections, then once you vote for them, vote them into power, the water just goes back to the way it was before?
Yes, because as we are the ANC members, and the DA is the one who has the power around us. So now, if we approach to the DA, they allege that no, we will, but they will never even come to the point that they brought us a clean water. So as ANC member, we ask the ones who knows or who can bring this water problem into hands. You see.
Now, Professor, just coming to you, in terms of the research that you've done and some of the surveys and results perhaps, have you noticed if protests tend to increase closer to election period? Do they get more intense because they know that the politicians actually need their votes and it's the time that they'll be heard, that their cries will actually be heard?
Yes, I think that, there was a very good study a couple of years ago called The Smoke That Calls. In other words, when one sees smoke, one comes to look at what's causing the fire. And a lot of communities feel that they're only being seen or heard when there is smoke, when there is some form of resistance. And this does tend to have patterns and trends, although that hasn't been fully confirmed. It is found that there are more protests around the time of local and national government elections. But of course, the electioneering starts. And the moment the electioneering starts and the promises start, people start feeling more comfortable and feeling as if things are going to be better. So, it just depends very much on the kinds of promises made by political parties and whether they can actually fulfill those promises. So to a certain extent, there might even be more protests after an election if people find that those election promises haven't been seen to.
And you think, Professor, that we're actually developing a culture of actually bringing the country to a standstill or holding it to ransom, so to speak, in order to have cries being heard?
I think it's a very sad situation, and I wouldn't blame communities for this at all. I mean, the intention, I believe, really is to request the services that one is entitled to, such as clean water. The problem seems to lie a little bit in terms of the fact that our government officials are not really well trained in responding to communities. And of course, we have situations where budgets are very restrictive and there are a number of rules around intergovernmental relations that prevent some people from talking to others. So there is a lot that needs to be done in terms of the system, not necessarily people, but very much the system of governance and government and the way in which government officials respond to communities timeously and with honest answers, to talk to people, to find out what they need and then to respond.
Now, Mr. Sohoe, what is the way forward? Will the protest action continue tomorrow? What is the plan?
Re tlhoka gore the MEC a ka tlatle a tlo re botsa gore sa nnete ke eng metsi a tla feletse a le lokile le because ke ene fela ha re botsisa o motho kwa hae the director o re botsa ka MEC wena o botsa ka the manager o botsa ka the MEC so now re kopa gore MEC a ka itla e ska tshaba batho re batho I mean, a tlo bua le rena re botsa nnete fela gore metsi ana a tla lokaleng re ka itumela thata.
So all you want is the truth, because the councillor and municipal manager keep pointing to the MEC for answers. So ultimately, you're waiting for the MEC to respond.
We are waiting for the MEC because everyone is pointing to the MEC.
And Tabo, your closing comments?
My closing comment is that we as community, we are pleading to the government to bring us clean water, fresh water, and the bills. The bills is also another problem, because we are experiencing high bills, you know.
So high water tariffs, they're charging you a lot for the water.
A lot
abnormal
of
bills.
abnormal ones.
That we are pleading to the government to try to settle those bills down, please.
Well, Professor, your closing comments?
Well, I'd just like to say that we need to do a lot of hard work to ensure that relationships are built across civil society, communities, government, and even the private sector. And that, you know, we work towards building trust in democracy again, because we've lost so much of it, unfortunately, over the last few years.
Well, thank you very much to my esteemed panelists. Do remember, as a viewer, that the conversation continues once the show has come to an end. Follow us on Twitter at AfroWorldView. From myself and the Primetime crew, Salang Nitsokofetse, but do stay tuned for business news coming up next with my colleague Harold Popalam.